Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports, where we perform vital public services like delivering Joe Biden's report card on his promise to unite the nation. But I don't want you to think that I'm putting words in his mouth. This is how his stunning win was reported on the week after the election in 2020. This from CNN on November 8th, 2020. President-elect Joe Biden seeks to unite nation with victory speech. Biden addressed a deeply divided nation Saturday night, turning to the challenges ahead by grounding his victory speech in the spirit of compromise, asking supporters of President Donald Trump to give him a chance and calling on Americans to turn the page from what he described as a grim era of demonization. And further along, after jogging on stage wearing a mask, Biden repeated his promise that he would seek to unify rather than divide. He pledged to govern by the creed that he does not see blue states and red states, but he only sees the United States. Well, I have news for you, President Biden. Over 3/4 of Republicans think that you've weaponized the justice system against your political opponents. But here's today's data. President Biden campaigned on a promise to unite Americans. How would you rate the job that he's doing in terms of uniting the country? And almost 1,100 U.S. likely voters, only 10% of them said excellent. Another 18% said good, for a combined total of 28%. Now that 28%, believe it or not, puts this as one of Joe Biden's absolute lowest ratings of any of the ones we poll. He's usually a little bit higher on national security, and this is down in the illegal immigration border territory. And it's actually quite a bit lower than the last time we asked, when 33% of likely voters gave him a combined excellent or good. 52% of voters say poor, and 18% say fair, for a combined total of 70%, 7 in 10, or over 2 out of 3 voters, saying that Joe Biden has done a fair or poor job in terms of uniting the country. How's that promise working out? But here are the party numbers, and I guess the Republican numbers aren't too surprising. 75% of Republicans say he's doing a poor job, and only 5% say an excellent job, and a 12% combined good or excellent rating. But the big surprise here is probably the number among independents. Now, Donald Trump is only leading Joe Biden by, the low teens among independent voters. But 60% of independent voters say that Joe Biden is doing a poor job uniting the country, and another 21% say fair, for a combined 81%. Only 19% of independents say that Joe Biden is doing a good or excellent job. So they're basically polling like Republicans on this number. And even Democrats are kind of repudiating Biden here. Only 18% of Democrats say that Biden's doing an excellent job in his promise to unite the country. And only 35% say good, for a very slim 53% majority. That's horrible. But even more horrible are the age numbers. The big surprise here is the 18 to 39-year-old response. Normally, they have a little bit of a lefter stance, so you'd expect them to give maybe Biden a little bit more slack here. But they're just as tough as anyone else. In fact, way tougher than the 65 and older crowd. 10% of 18 to 39-year-olds give Joe Biden an excellent rating on his promise of uniting the country, and only 29% give him a combined excellent or good. I have a suspicion that the younger voters want to see more unity out of the country. And so perhaps this result here gives a little bit of insight into why 18 to 39-year-olds have swung Trump really big in the last 4 years. But if you want to see division, here it is. I have never seen a bigger signal, a larger majority in any of my polling than the number of strong disapprovers of Joe Biden that say he's done a poor job. Absolutely none of these people say he's done an excellent job, and only 2% say good. Seriously, you don't see numbers in the high 90s. So one of the things that this is telling me is that one of the reasons that people strongly disapprove of Joe Biden is because he is failing to unite the country. But look at the strongly approved column. Joe Biden's strongest approvers aren't giving him a glowing review here. Only 42% of them say he's done an excellent job, though a combined 85% say he's done a good or excellent job. But he can't get to a majority with anyone else, so it's only his true believers that think he's doing a good job. But here's the meat of this. Has America become more united or more divided since the 2020 elections, or has it remained about the same? Only 9% of the electorate say that the country has become more united, and 70% say it's become more divided. Now, we've asked this question a couple times because of Joe Biden's promise to unite the country, and these are the worst by far the numbers have ever been. Just 2 years ago, right before the 2022 election, 12% of the electorate said the country's become more united, and 66% said it's become more divided. Now, if you're doing that math, that's a 61-point margin down to a 54-point margin, or a 17-point swing in just 2 years. But 2 years before that, right after Joe Biden's election, 16% said the country's become more united since the 2020 elections, and 56% said it's become more divided. So that's a 40-point margin, or down from 61 points, a 21-point swing in under 4 years of Joe Biden's presidency. There's no way to spin this as a success. Joe Biden has failed in his promise to unite the country. But we can look at the party numbers and see that there really isn't a signal here. Democrats kind of agree with everybody else that the country has become less united and more divided with their president in office. In fact, pretty much everyone in the demographics agrees by really strong margins. There was hardly a signal anywhere. The only place I could find a signal was looking at how people rate Joe Biden on his promise to unite the country. People that rated Joe Biden excellent were most likely to say that the country has become more united, but it's only 1/3 of them, and 35% say it's become more divided. But everybody else pretty much disagrees. And look at that poor row. 91% of them say that the country has become more divided. But which would do more to unite America? If Joe Biden or Donald Trump wins this year's presidential election? 35% say it would become more united if Biden wins, but 43% say Trump. A pretty big 19% say it wouldn't make much difference. So there's your apathy response. But here are the party numbers, and they're pretty much as you'd expect, but Donald Trump has a bit more of a strong signal among Republicans than Biden has among Democrats. In fact, only 2 out of 3 Democrats say that the country would become more united if Biden wins. But look at that independent row. 41% of independents say Trump, but only 25% say Biden. So that's a 16-point lead for Trump. But they're also the most indifferent, which does make sense because a lot of people are independents because they hate the political process and the division it causes. But if you go back to the top line responses with Trump leading over Biden in this question by 8 points, that 8-point number should be pretty familiar. If you've been watching our videos, you've seen our mega chart, the one you need to follow this election cycle to understand what's going to happen. And here it is. It's the 5-period moving averages of all of our election matchup questions going back to the 2016 election. Almost 10 years of Trump presidential polling. Now, the 5-period moving average is to smooth out the wild swings back and forth. And just by doing that, a really clear signal emerges of what's going to happen. In 2016, Trump and Clinton were roughly neck and neck. And at the end, Hillary Clinton pulled out about a 2-point lead in the moving averages of our polling. And look at that yellow line. That was the final reported results. And we nailed it. That's about as close as you can get. Now, of course, Trump won with the electoral votes from the swing states. But man, that popular vote, we did good. Now, in 2020, something different happened. Biden had a massive lead for the entire cycle in all of our polling. There was a period when Trump was catching up, but then it rapidly turned around. And again, we did an incredible job matching that yellow line, the final reported margin of the 2020 election. So if we nailed 2016 and we nailed 2020 and we really didn't change our methodology or weighting at all, then this final chart looks really bad for Biden. He went from roughly about a 48% in 2020 to now about a 41%. So that's about a 7-point drop. And Trump actually looked like he's picked up 2 or 3 points, especially in the last couple of months. So that's a 10-point swing in Biden's performance in just 4 years. And I have to think that this key promise and his inability to deliver on it has to be one of the reasons that he's doing much worse now. And at this point, it looks like a surefire loss for him. And that same signal has played out in his job approval ratings as well. And I know we catch a lot of flack for having Joe Biden higher than anybody else, but I think that's accurate. I mean, he did win the most votes in history. But looking at his job approval rating, that's worse than Trump structurally by about 3-4 points, depending where you're looking at. And again, these are moving averages, but follow the red line. And Trump started out higher than Biden, had a rough patch in his first summer as he was fighting through the initial Russiagate stuff, but then proceeded to spend pretty much the rest of his term in the high 40s, bumping above 50 a couple times. Biden's only been above 50 a scant few times in the beginning of his term, and he never started near as high as Trump. He resurged a little bit after the 2022 midterm elections and the Dobbs decision, but the trend is not his friend here. He is losing ground. If Joe Biden really was successful in uniting the country, and again, I think it's fair to say he hasn't been, since the numbers the entire time have moved in the wrong direction, you'd have to imagine that he'd be polling better. People have been concerned about division in this country for a long time, and he would essentially have been pulling off the impossible. But we have been polling on a lot of issues during his term. And it's fair to say that he's given voters a lot of ammunition to think that he's actually behind the increased division. And I'll just run down a few. To start, for the very first time in Joe Biden's term, the CIA and the FBI lost their majority positive favorability. 50% agree the FBI is a danger to freedom and security for law-abiding people. 64% now say the FBI is politically weaponized, starting from the top in Washington. 60% of voters say that the media is the enemy of the people. 65% think that the Capitol riots on January 6th were provoked by federal agents. 62% think law is being used as a political weapon, like in a banana republic. And 72% of voters are concerned that our country is becoming a police state. All those numbers about the stunning collapse in trust in institutions are from Joe Biden's term. And every time we ask, we get new, higher record-setting numbers. If you have other questions you'd like to see us ask about failing trust in institutions, about the government being weaponized against political opponents, or about increased division in this country, please post them in the YouTube or Rumble comments, and I'll take a look. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Rasmussen_poll. Go to RasmussenReports.com to sign up for a free daily email update of all our polling. And thanks for watching.